Okay, I guess we can start. So, hello everyone. Let's do a Twitter space to talk about Madara and Starknet Appchains. I'm very happy because I have a very great lineup of speakers. So I will let them introduce themselves briefly. So I'm Abdel. I'm leading the exploration team in Starkware. Basically, the goal is to create some exciting open source projects to push the frontier of the technology of Starknet and Cairo, and also to onboard a lot of contributors to those projects. And at some point, those projects can become fully autonomous and can become actual companies building products like Kakarot, for example, and we have Clément there, who is a co-founder of Kakarot. And yeah, one of the recent projects that we started in the exploration team is Madara, and we will talk about Madara today. Who want to go next?
I can go next if you want,
Yeah,
Abdel,
go
because
ahead.
you mentioned so you mentioned Kakarot. So thanks a lot for inviting me to this space. I'm Clément, co-founder of Kakarot right now. I've met Abdel and Starknet ecosystem more than a year ago. And so started to build a community project Kakarot, then to lead it. In the meantime, also started to work on Madara when the project kickstarted around maybe January or February, I don't remember exactly. And so, yes, pleased to be here to talk about Madara, which is something like really great for the whole Starknet ecosystem and something that we plan to use definitely in production for Kakarot. And for those who don't know, maybe just Kakarot, so it's right now ZK EVM written in Cairo. And short term should be an interoperability layer for the Starknet ecosystem to enable people to use EVM tools and wallets and stuff. And long term, just going down to being a type 1 EVM, hopefully.
Nice. Fede, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Fede. I'm from Lambda class. Uh, we are collaborating with Oak in the project. Myself, I'm a newbie in the substrate world. I'm learning. Abdel substrate me, pill me, or something like that. The last few months on, I think it's a very good project, especially because of the big community that Abdel on the rest of the teams managed to gather around this so interesting project. And I hope that it becomes the one of the most successful L3s in the market. Uh, I think has everything to be the leader.
Yeah, thank you, Fede. I really wanted to have you because not only you are contributing to Madara, but also you are building your own sequencer, etc. So it will be interesting to compare the different approaches and see the pros and cons of using a framework like Substrate versus building from scratch. So I really wanted to have you. So thank you for being there. Matthias, you want to go next?
Yep, sure. So, hello everyone. I'm Matthias. I'm the co-founder of Pragma, which is a decentralized oracle built on Starknet. Was there at the very beginning of Madara, and basically, in the context of Pragma, we recently announced Pragma X, which will basically be the next iteration of the oracle built as a Starknet app chain. Hence, why I've been mostly spending my time building on Madara for the past few months, and overall very excited about like the whole interoperability between all the Madara chains, the Starknet app chain, and how it's going to solve a lot of problems, I think, in the ecosystem and create new unique use cases. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. And finally, we have Terence.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me. I'm Terrence, I'm a co-founder of Cartridge, and we're building games tooling and infrastructure in the Starknet ecosystem. And we're using Madara to host game-specific rollups for games that have different requirements from the layers that they're settling on, mostly around like latency and throughput, and don't necessarily need access to the shared context of like a shared execution layer. And we have actually a game that's live today on the Renegade Madara instance that you can check out and play, and the UX and the transaction confirmation times make it for a really great user experience.
Thank you, Terence. So yeah, let's go. So we'll talk about Madara, about Starknet Appchains, and how you guys plan to use it for your different projects, and also talk a bit more about the technical architecture, etc. So first of all, I will give a brief overview of what is Madara. So Madara is a Starknet sequencer. So in a validity rollup architecture, you have two main components. You have the sequencer and the prover. So the sequencer is responsible of taking transactions from the users and then creating the blocks and moving the chain and the state forward. And then asynchronously, you have the prover that is responsible of generating the validity proofs. And then you submit the proofs to the settlement layer. So for Starknet, the settlement layer is Ethereum. Okay, so Madara is a Starknet sequencer. That means it's compatible with Starknet RPC specification, and it is capable of running Starknet's smart contracts written in Cairo. And the goal is to be able to run Starknet Appchains using Madara. And those Appchains can be either a layer 2 or layer 3. And the goal really with Madara is to be really flexible and to give the possibility to Appchains to really configure everything and choose, for example, the data availability layer, stuff like that. We'll go into more details later. But that's the main idea of Madara. So we decided to build it with using Substrate framework. So Matthias, you want to give an introduction about Substrate and why we decided to use it for Madara?
Sure. Yeah. So at first, actually, if we go back to the history, at Pragma, we really wanted to build our own custom Starknet back in January when basically there was nothing, like there was not even anyone talking about Starknet stack or things like this. And we started by looking into the Cosmos SDK and going from there, maybe like going even from 10 domain from scratch. But the fact it was we're slowly witnessing the whole Starknet ecosystem moving to Rust with the Caro VM, all the Starknet in Rust, all the things our Lambda class are building, but also Starkware with the blockifier and all these. The biggest libraries and tools were built in Rust, especially the VM. So rewriting everything in Go was just very, very hard to do and probably not optimal. And then talking with Abdel about Substrate, we realized Substrate was this very powerful framework that is like very, very generic. It's basically used in all the Polkadot ecosystem by all the parachains, and it doesn't make any assumption about like nothing about the block time, about the hashing functions. It gives you some consensus to play with, but technically you could implement your own consensus. And it's just a very powerful framework, really leveraging Rust. I think to its most, like there are a bunch of macros everywhere, and it's and it also is decentralized out of the box. It comes with like a bunch of tooling, like telemetry, like just a bunch of tooling because it's a very old piece of software. It has been there for the last 6 years, and that's something we can really leverage to like just go way faster. That's why we managed to make something like almost pretty much usable in like just a few months. I think in 2-3 months we already had something working pretty nice. And that's just the main advantage. I don't know if you guys see other things I might have forgotten, but on my side I think that's already a lot.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a pretty nice overview. I think it's important to emphasize that first of all, that we have a very great diversity of in terms of the Starknet stack in the ecosystem. We have many implementations of full nodes, many implementations of sequencers, etc. So that's very strong aspect of Starknet ecosystem, and we have some good examples here with the speakers because Fede is building another sequencer, and Terence is also building another sequencer for development purposes. So Fede, Terence, can you please talk a bit about the sequencers you are building and the purposes of your sequencers and the architectural choices you made?
Yeah, sure. It was called Kraken originally. We changed the name to Starnet Stack so that we have a common name for all the different implementations that are already existing in the Starnet ecosystem. Uh, it's a very small project for now. You can check it on our GitHub. On actually, we wanna some of the things we're doing on that project. We wanna port them for Madara. For example, yesterday we were playing with Cairo Native. We already managed to have RC20s working on. We're going to do some performance analysis, and also we have Starnet in Rust becoming faster on the blockifier in the upcoming weeks. We already have a few patches to make it really fast, and we're also doing the hashing that blockifier is not doing. So we want to port all this work to Madara. We see it as I think in some sense we have more flexibility, but at the same time we don't have all the features that Madara has. I think Madara is better to have something to go to the market in the short term, on for the L3s, and maybe our sequencer more for the long run on the L2. So I don't see them as competitors. More like it's a cross pollination. How do you say cross pollination? I think of ideas from the two communities. For example, we can play more closely with Cairo Native because we're working on that, and the two teams are really close. But we want to talk with Oak and you to see how we can already start doing some tests in Cairo Native on top of Madara. So, from my point of view, like there's going to be some shared ideas and some differences, and I'm eager to learn way more about all the things that Substrate has. That it's very difficult that we can implement them really quick. Like, for example, what's your name, Abdel? The fact that you can like do upgrades soft fork, right?
Yeah, forkless upgrades. Yeah, it's a very powerful feature.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can talk about it later.
So,
Yeah.
so those things we won't be able to support them. Obviously, Substrate has been in development for many years. So I think we'll have different options for different types of users, and that's good for the network. It makes Starknet more resilient and better.
Yeah, definitely agree on that. This diversity is a very strong advantage that we have because we can build different pieces of software with different technologies, with different architecture to serve different purposes. So yeah, that's great. Terence, you want to speak a bit about Katana?
Yeah, sure. So we started building Katana as part of the Dojo toolchain earlier this year, and initially it was, the goal of Katana is to be a very simple sequencer, and right now it's focused more, like you mentioned, on development purposes, so it doesn't have to be concerned about things like consensus and the additional complexity that incorporating like a peer-to-peer stack and stuff adds to the code base. So Katana is super simple. I mean, it's basically, Cairo OS as the foundation wrapped with Blockifier, which introduced like the Starknet OS on top of the Cairo OS, and then we wrap it in an RPC provider. It's designed to be modular, so you can like easily extend it. We have like a Katana RPC namespace with some development RPCs. The plan going forward is to use Katana for experimentation with different kind of architectures for game-specific rollups. So, in a lot of cases, for game applications, you might be willing to give up, censorship resistance and not care about decentralization and having the ability for multiple people to operate like sequences and have consensus in order to have like much lower latency. Or to have like regional sequencers for like specific games in a particular region. So Katana I think will serve as kind of a foundation for experimentation with these kind of architectures because it's so much simpler. It's easy to play around with things, and then I think like the pipeline will probably be like, or would potentially be like if you can easily demonstrate like hack something together in Katana, and if it starts to make sense and you want to roll it out into a more mature ecosystem, or like a game actually starts to have the requirement that it needs decentralization and stuff, like these features can be upstreamed into Madara or the Starknet stack or other sequencers, and incorporate there as well.
Okay, very cool. We have Mangata who joined the Twitter space. Do you want to explain briefly what is Mangata and how you plan to use Madara?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for letting me on stage. Yeah, sure. So we are Mangata Finance, and we are building an interchain DEX. So the primary problem that we are looking at is that centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges have different advantages and disadvantages. So most people want to trade on a decentralized exchange, but it's at the moment it's just not as convenient as a centralized exchange. And when you look at cross-chain native swaps, so if you're coming from the perspective of a regular trader that is trading on a centralized exchange, you just want to swap tokens. So you want to swap ETH, DOT, Atom, and so on and so on and so on. And currently, it's not possible to do this on a regular decentralized exchange, other than trading bridge tokens. But bridge tokens come up with a lot of problems. You see that even if a bridge is optimally implemented, it's still carrying limitations, and you will always have to hold bridged tokens, which is just an issue. And so there are problems with both approaches, and what we want to do is build an interchain exchange that basically rolls up to several ecosystems at the same time. So we call this the multi-rollup, and Madara is giving us this opportunity. So natively, we started developing on Polkadot, and this is so you're building on a substrate-based chain. So the step to Madara is ideal for us because now we can leverage the power of Starknet, Starkware, and build a rollup that rolls up to Ethereum or other EVMs and a Polkadot, and in the future, even other ecosystems at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. Before we dive into more details about Madara architecture, we said that we are using substrates. We briefly talked about the advantages. I want also to talk about the cons because obviously there is no silver bullet. And I want you, Fede, to discuss about that and why you thought that it would be interesting to explore another approach and why using substrate has some limitations, according to you.
Sorry, did you mention me or somebody else?
Fede, yeah, Fede, you, Fede.
Yeah. So this is not only a comment from some substrate. I think that software, like let me think how to explain it, but the general idea is that I believe that every time you choose a path, you're like not choosing another one. Like in science and engineering, there's always like some type of trade-off. You cannot get bias and variance at the same time, or momentum. On like in science, you always have to choose. On when you're choosing something like substrate or even Tendermint or Cosmos SDK, the good thing is that you get a lot of things for free, right? Because you have a lot of code that already does a lot of things for you. The downside of it, it's exactly that you get a lot of things and it's difficult to debug it. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means like you need to know very well the stack, and you need to like understand exactly how each part of the system is working. If you're going to be an user, that's not so important, right? Because you want to abstract things. You don't want to like you don't need to know how an engine works to be able to use a car. But however, if you are the person developing it, you need to understand very well substrate or Tendermint, and I'm sure Abdel you do. But for example, me, I don't. So whenever we create things systems, I always congrats my team whenever they send PRs that are deleting code rather than adding code. I come from OpenBSD on like security background, so I like in engineering terms to remove code. I don't like adding too many lines of code. For example, the new VM we're going to try to do it in 15,000 lines of code in a clear way without like being too short. But the general message is like I think that it's very good to have a complex solution or a solution that has many features. But also, I believe minimalism on having things that are clear and easy to debug, especially when there's something breaking in production, is very important. Actually, one of the few critics I have in Ethereum, I'm a person that loves Ethereum. The only critic I have is that the stack got so complicated in the last 2 or 3 years. We're trying to do a consensus node right now, and there's so many RFCs or in Ethereum they're called EIPs or the different improvements on the protocol that it makes it's very difficult in your head to have all the things. That's, for example, why I like Starks. Starks are simple in comparison to Snarks in many ways. So the short message is like I'm saying that Substrate is really good. I had some prejudgments, but I'm already seeing that I was wrong. On Abdel showed me that it was in some ways better than Cosmos SDK. That said, I do like Tendermint, but the only problem I have with these solutions is that you need to understand everything if you're going to modify them. That's not bad. It's just that it's a downside.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't come badly. I'm not against using it.
No.
It's just
That's
like
a very interesting take, and I totally agree with you.
I have
Yeah. Yeah, Clément.
Yeah, I have a question. I have a question for you, Fede, regarding this rebuilding versus using Substrate. Do you think that not only in terms of security, but also maybe in terms of performance, we will, in the long run, lose against a customized, developed sequencer, like if we stick to Substrate?
To be honest, I'm sure yes. But speed is not the only important thing. For example, one issue we have, Cairo Native uses MLIR. And we're already seeing that compiling that to WASM is going to be difficult. We're already doing some things. Probably we'll be able to compile it to WASM, but maybe not be OSTD compatible. And for example, that's a shortcut. Like it gives you some benefits, but it also blocks you in other ways. On the message is like, if you have too many layers, debugging that on making it faster is going to be more difficult. But again, I don't think it's bad. I actually think it's good. We are going to have a solution working right now. But in the long run, I do believe that something that is way shorter or smaller and can be easily debugged and modified on scene is going to be faster.
And so maybe do you think that there should be, like, as we have spec for the RPC